Good evening and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. As India fights coronavirus and efforts are on to save lives, the restrictive measures like lockdowns, on the other hand, have hurt the economy very badly. Lakhs of people have lost jobs and livelihood as the economic activity came to a standstill, and crores of people are expected to be impoverished. A survey done by FICCI last month has projected India's annual median growth in the current financial year to dip to minus 4.5%. In the agenda today, we will try to find out from a very eminent economist, Professor Arun Kumar, about his assessment of the situation. But before we welcome Professor Kumar, have a look at this small report.
The COVID-19 lockdown has sharply accelerated economic stress in the country. Industry body FICCI's latest economic outlook survey has pegged India's growth for 2020-21 at minus 4.5% as the country continues to see a gradual rise in financial stress. Data shows that the GDP estimated for the first quarter of the year will be minus 14.2%. The official growth number for the first quarter are expected to be released by the end of August 2020. The minimum growth estimate is minus 6.4%, while the maximum growth is 1.5% for the year 2020-21. The current round of the survey was conducted in the month of June 2020 and drew responses from leading economists representing industry, banking and financial services sector. Agriculture seems to be the only sector with a silver lining right now. FICCI's Economic Outlook Survey observed that there is an upside as far as the performance of monsoon is concerned this year, and the water reservoir levels in the country stand at good levels. Economic activity-wise annual forecast indicated a median growth of 2.7% for agriculture and allied activities in 2020-21. One of the biggest casualties of the virus have been the industry and service sector, with travel, food and beverage industry expected to contract by 11.4% and 2.8% respectively in 2020-21. FICCI said some of the stimulus measures are reaching to the ground, especially through the credit guarantee scheme for MSMEs and supporting through Manrega, which is positive. The outlook of the participating economies on inflation remains modest. WPI-based inflation rate is projected at minus 0.3% in 2020-21, with a minimum and maximum range of minus 1.5% and 2.5% respectively. Economies were of the view that government measures in Stimulus 2.0 needed to focus broadly on saving lives and on undertaking deep structural reforms, while they felt that the quasi-fiscal measures and structural reforms announced were steps in the right decision. The court implementation and results will take a long time due to the present situation. Participating economists highlighted that the measures announced by both RBI and the government focus largely on addressing supply-side constraints with limited support for the creation of demand. Economists who took part in the survey strongly felt that there is a need to provide more measures to boost demand conditions in the economy. Apart from pure cash transfers, the government could also consider GST rate reduction, especially in the non-essential goods segment, which has the potential to drive demand. Furthermore, some sort of tax waivers could also be undertaken for low-income groups. Participants said that while the RBI has been proactive in addressing liquidity constraints in the economy, banks remain risk-averse despite being pushed to infuse liquidity in the market. A muted response to all the schemes that RBI came up with to infuse cash in the system thus shows that economy will take time to recover. Bureau Report.
So let's welcome Professor Kumar to the program.
Hello.
Hello. So let me ask first about the FICCI survey, which says that the median annual growth this year will be minus 4.5 and the growth will be in the range of minus 1.5 and 6.4, minus 6.4. So what is your assessment about the situation?
The economy will not reach the 2 to 3 years. It will be a very shallow recovery because what has happened is that the consumer sentiment is down and the investment sentiment is also very badly hurt because, starting from lockdown, the economy was working only at about 25% capacity. You can say compared to last year, it was down by about 75%. Now, if it recovers, from that low, and the industrial sector is only functioning at about 40-45% at the moment. Services, a lot of services are not functioning properly. Like for instance, your hotels, your tourism, your transportation. So, services sector, which is the dominant sector in the economy, roughly about 60% of GDP, that is not functioning very well. The industrial sector is not functioning very well. Only, your some FMCG sector, medical sector, agriculture, these are the only sectors that, have been functioning. So if the recovery takes place in even 1 year, then also the rate of growth will be something like minus 30% or minus 35%. Because we are starting with minus 75% during lockdown, and it recovers, say, to 0% in 12 months, the average will come to about minus 35%. So the rate of growth will be way down. To get a 4.5%, only decline in the year, starting now, the economy will have to start growing at about 10 to 12% per annum. But we know that even before the pandemic started, before the lockdown came, the economy was already doing very poorly. The rate of growth in the last quarter of the last year had come down to something like 3.1%. So the economy was not doing very well at all. And post the lockdown, it has done very badly.
Yeah, as you said, that Moody has also said that the economy will be, Indian economy will be dipping this year, and by the second half of next year, it will recover. So do you agree with that assessment?
So, that is a very optimistic assessment that it will recover by second half of next year. As I said, at a very optimistic level, something like that may happen. But given the kind of depression the economy is in, it could take 2 to 3 years to recover back to where it was in 2020 January. And actually the economy will never recover back to in January 2020 because a lot of things are going to change. Cost of doing business will increase because from now on we have to do physical distancing, we'll have to do sanitization, and people will have to work at a distance. So a lot of changes will take place in production, a lot of changes will take place in distribution. So the economy is not likely to return back to January 2020. It will be a new normal. And this new normal is something that we have to anticipate. Now, the second thing that is going to happen is that because the economy will be down by, say, about 35 to 40% over last year, the revenue of the government will be way down. Because you see, the GST collection is, largely on thin goods, on luxury goods, non-essential items. They are the ones which fall in the 18%, 28%, and 43%. And all the essential goods fall in the 0% or 5% bracket. And now the production is reoriented towards the essential production, away from the luxury production and thin goods, etc. So therefore, the GST collection is way down, and income tax collection will be down. Your corporate tax collection will be also down because a lot of companies have been closed for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and many of the companies will close down permanently because a lot of businesses will fail.
Yeah.
So therefore, the income tax collection, corporate tax collection, they will also fall. The only saving grace is the increased collection in the diesel and petrol because there the government has increased the taxes. So that's the only saving grace. Otherwise, there would have been a very large decline in the revenue collection of the government, and therefore the fiscal deficit of the government will be very high. So all told, the government revenues will be in a crisis. There will not be enough money for helping the poor people, for the medical expenses, and so on and so forth. So it's a very dire situation, and the government must reformulate its budget because neither its expenditures will be what they were in the budget, nor its revenue will be what it was in the budget. So if you look at all this, then the recovery will take at least 2 to 3 years. It won't be 1.5 years even.
So as you said that economic activity, the efforts are being made to revive the economy, but social distancing and other means, workforce is absent. Most of it, they have left the metropolitan cities, and so that is also causing a huge hindrance. Do you agree with that?
So, at the moment, the shortage of workforce may be there in some sectors, but otherwise, you see, because business is not able to restart, So people who are returning are not able to find work. So, there are both kinds of things. Where the economic activity is picking up, there may be some shortages, but in other areas, actually, labor is not able to find work. So, we have to be very careful in analyzing where the problems are and what needs to be done. So, we can analyze, say, the organized sector and the unorganized sector separately. The Indian economy has 6% people working in the organized sector and 94% working in the unorganized sector. And the unorganized sector has completely closed down once the lockdown was implemented. So that is where the bulk of the workforce is. And they are the ones, who will not be able to find work easily because unorganized sector works with very little capital. And when the business closes down, then, they eat up the capital. They don't have working capital to revive the work. So, my own suspicion is that the unorganized sector is going to face a very, very difficult time. Organized sector will probably face less difficult time, but there are a lot of NPAs that were building up because the economy was slowing down even before March 2020. So NPAs will rise there, and many businesses there may also fail. So All India Manufacturers Organization has been saying that 30% businesses could fail, and the Confederation of All India Traders Association has been saying that 30% retail traders can fail. And we can see that the business of e-commerce is increasing. So people are ordering more from e-commerce like your Flipkart, your Amazon, and so on and so forth. So people are going less to malls, less to the stores in the markets, etc. So there many businesses could fail. So if this kind of business failure is there, then the employment generation will not revive very quickly. So even if people return back from the rural areas, they may find it difficult to get employment. And I was reading in today's newspaper itself, that many people who are coming back are not finding work. They're finding it very difficult, and they are again planning to go back. So if the business doesn't revive, then the unemployment situation will remain very stark. And when people go back to the rural areas, they will look for work under the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. And as the data is coming in, the demand for work under Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme has risen dramatically. Similarly, we may have to think about starting an urban employment guarantee scheme for those workers who are in the urban areas and who are not getting a job in the urban areas. They would also need work. So these are the kind of steps that may be required for the employment generation program of the country.
So, Professor, the government, it's almost over a month since the government announced a 20 lakh crore stimulus package.
Yes.
So, 1 month down the line, do you think it has had even a little bit of impact?
So, government, Prime Minister, I think on June 12th had announced 20 lakh crore, and then the Finance Minister had, in 5 press conferences up to 17th, had spelled out what this 20 lakh crore program would be. Now, this 20 lakh crore program is only giving about 2 lakh crore from the budget in terms of support to the poor people, to the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, and to the free food distribution program and things like that. But the remaining 18 lakh crore is largely credit. It's largely policy announcements and credit to various sectors. It's changing the definition of the, MSME, the micro, small and medium sector. It's thinking about setting up a aircraft maintenance hub in India, about space and about various other things, building infrastructure in the rural areas, for agriculture. Now, these are some good steps, but they are all medium term and long term, and they're all supply side things. Whereas what we need to do is immediately work on demand, because the demand which has gone, and because demand is not there, that's why industry is not finding demand, business is not finding demand, and is not able to ramp up production, not able to ramp up sales. So what we needed to do was much more for the poor people who have lost employment, and my estimate is 200 million people from the unorganized sector and the organized sector would have lost employment. Even though CMIE data says 112 million people lost employment, but my own estimate is that our unorganized sector closed down, except for those in agriculture. And even in agriculture, there was difficulty of different kinds. We can discuss that a little later. But, 200 million people losing employment means their income went to zero. And if there are 4 people per family, that means 800 million people live below the poverty line. So their demand has gone down, And as I said, investment has gone down. So we have to revive demand for consumption. We have to revive demand for investment. And that would mean that, we have to spend from the budget, so that people begin to increase demand. So if you put more money into the rural employment guarantee scheme that will, give money to these people who are working in the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, and they will begin to buy things. Similarly, if you start an urban guarantee scheme, people in the urban area will start to buy. Now, that is not what has been done in this 20 lakh crore package. So, what we need is an immediate short-term package. Long-term and medium-term may work out, may not work out. These are called supply-side responses, and they sometimes work, sometimes they don't work. And especially in a situation where demand is short, they are unlikely to deliver. So, for instance, the RBI has cut interest rates, but if the demand for credit is not there, then people will not be able to take advantage of the cut in the interest rate. So even though liquidity has been increased by the RBI, credit has been made cheaper, but banks are saying that look, people are not coming forward to take credit. So therefore banks have got excess liquidity of 8 lakh crore, which they are depositing at a reverse repo rate in the RBI. They say that look, if people are not coming forward to take credit from us, then money can't be lying idle. We have to pay interest to our depositors. So at least we'll deposit in RBI. RBI has repeatedly cut the reverse repo rate in a hope that people will start taking credit. But when business is not working, investment is not taking place, then credit is not required. So that's why the policies, this 20 lakh crore package also included the RBI package of about 8 to 9 lakh crore and the other packages that were announced. But these packages will not be able to deliver the short-term demand-raising things that are very critical. So government should relook at this, how to raise demand in the economy so that the businesses can begin to function better.
So basically, rupees 20 lakh crore was not addressing the demand issue, demand side. Demand has in fact crashed. So how to boost that?
Right.
That should be boosted, no?
Yes.
Only then the economic...
2 lakh crore, yes, only 2 lakh crore has been there to boost demand immediately. Of course, if the medium-term and long-term programs work over a period of time, then later on demand will come, but we need
that may take up to 10 years. That may take up to 10 years.
Yes, that's right. That could take 3, 5, 10 years, as you say. So that's not the immediate solution that is needed. So what we need to do is we need to create employment and we need to give purchasing power to the poor people. So if 800 million people have slipped below the poverty line, they don't have purchasing powers, and we need to give funds to them. And my argument has been that, if we assume that we give them half the World Bank extreme poverty line. The World Bank extreme poverty line is $1.9 per person per day. So suppose we give them only $0.95 per person per day, which comes to about 70 rupees per person per day, then that would require for 800 million people something like 18 lakh crores of rupees. Now we can absorb the MGNREGS scheme and we can absorb the subsidies, etc. And still about 15 lakh crore would be required. So, this 15 lakh crore rupee, if it is given, and we can say include the free food that is given, etc. In that. So, this 15 lakh crore rupee has to be found, to be given to these people, then the demand will become more buoyant. And then the demand for various things, essential items, etc. will also rise. So, the government must immediately revamp its budget to see how to get this 15 lakh crore. Because as I was saying to you earlier, the tax collection will go down quite substantially. The GST collection, the income tax collection, the corporate tax collection. So on the one hand, you have extra demand. On the other hand, your revenue will be short by, say, about 15 to 20 lakh crores. So you have 15 to 20 lakh crore additional demand and 15 to 20 lakh crore shortfall in the revenue. So fiscal deficit will rise about 35%, 40% of the GDP if you do calculate these things into the budget. So the government must reformulate its budget immediately.
So as you said, the 20 lakh crore basically is credit oriented. So, but the issue is, and you said correctly, that people who don't have business won't take credit. But my assessment is even banks are very conservative in giving credit, because I think they are not sure about the return. Is it true?
So you are absolutely right that banks are also conservative. But at the moment, banks are saying that, people are not coming forward to get credit because the investment has gone down and their production has gone down. Suppose you are an automobile industry and your demand has come down, your production has come down, then you don't need that much working capital. Similarly, if you are an airline industry and your seats are only half full and you are operating at half the capacity that was there earlier, then you don't need that much credit, So businesses which are down, people who are not investing, they don't need credit, And that's why even if the banks wanted to give money, people will not come forward to take credit because their investment and their demand is come down. So, it's not just that banks are afraid. Of course, banks are afraid, but government has given sovereign guarantee for MSME. It has given a guarantee for others also, so that banks could give funds without fear that they will lose. But they are always worried that later on something may go wrong. But as I said earlier, basic problem is that today the demand is down and therefore demand for credit is down. So that's first, you have to resolve that, and then think about where banks would lend and where the banks would not lend. Because banks are also, as you rightly said, worried that the NPAs are rising, and these small and medium businesses and large businesses which are failing, if they turn into NPAs, then they'll have more problem, and the balance sheet will be bad, and therefore there will be problem for them.
So as you said that our economy was already on the decline, and the last quarter was 3.1% only. So how much adverse impact has COVID caused? Suppose we had been growing at 8%, and would this have been the situation? Just just an assessment.
No, so you are right that the economy was down already, and that means demand was falling short, and therefore the economy was going downhill. And this is a result of the fact that there was inequalities, there was a shock due to demonetization, shock due to GST, and the shock due to the failures of NBFC sector. Already Yes Bank was going down. Your other banks, the cooperative banks were going down in Bombay and so on and so forth. So there was a bit of a crisis that was developing in the Indian economy, and what has happened is that because of the pandemic, the lockdown came. And what does lockdown mean? Lockdown means you cannot move. So you have factories, you have offices, but people cannot go to factories, people cannot go to offices. So except for essential production, everything else shut down. So this pandemic has created a unique situation which the modern day economy has never faced. The world has never faced anything like this. And even the Spanish flu time, it was not like this, because now both demand has gone down and supply has gone down. Now, if you think about it, in a war, there's a crisis, but that doesn't mean that the employment goes down there, because everybody is busy in the war effort. Production doesn't go down because production is only reoriented to the war effort. So therefore, in a war, the demand doesn't go down. Now, if you look at the global financial crisis, there also it was a demand shortage, but supplies were there. But this is a unique crisis that supply is not there and demand is gone. So this is a much worse crisis to deal with. And our policymakers don't have experience of how to deal with it. Even a lot of economists don't have understanding as to how this has to be dealt with, because both supply and demand both are creating a problem. So this is a very unique situation. So what happened before March 2020 was something very timid, I would say, compared to what has happened post March 2020. The failure that was taking place before March 2020 is nothing compared to what has happened now, when demand and supply are both affected.
So we are running out of time, sir. But just one last comment. There is a view that maybe, as you said, the government should have a relook at its stimulus packages, how to boost demand. So there is a view that GST, there should be waiver of GST and tax waiver also. So do you agree with that?
No. You see, what has happened is that the tax collection will be way down compared to last year. In the month of April, there was only 15% tax collection compared to last year's April. Now, because of the fact that, there was some accumulation, there was postponement of GST, that's why, the collection for May was better, etc. But on the whole, I think that GST collection will be way down. And given that you don't have tax resources, you'll be very short of resources. If you cut GST further, there will be further problems. Because you'll have to support the poor people, you'll have to support the small businesses and prevent them from collapsing. So small businesses begin to collapse and they don't return the loans that they have taken, then the banks will begin to fail, the financial sector will begin to fail, because these are highly leveraged, and they are interconnected. So one person borrows from another, another borrows from the third and fourth. So if one fails, the second fails, the third fails. So financial sector is also in deep trouble. So therefore, where will you get the resources to be able to do the support of the small businesses, to do the support of the poor people, etc. So that's why, I don't think at this point of time there'll be a chance to cut GST or do anything on the taxes, What the government will have to do is borrow heavily from the RBI, float bonds, long-term bonds to which banks can subscribe, to which the wealthy people can subscribe. That's the only way to raise resources. So at this point, when the resources will be short, if you cut taxes further, there'll be a lot of trouble as far as the budget is concerned, and there'll be therefore implications for the monetary and the financial sector also.
So basically, we are in for deep trouble ahead. So thank you so much for participating in this debate, sir. That's all we have time for. This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I will be back with another interesting topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.